Eli heard the splash before the scream, a single crack of water that cut through the night behind the biker bar. 1 second, the Hell's Angels were laughing over engines and whiskey. The next, Razor's only daughter was sinking beneath a river so black it looked bottomless, and the only person who saw her fall was a homeless boy hiding in the shadows. When Eli dove in, he thought he was just saving a stranger. He didn't know that pulling her out would drag out a buried secret. And make 400 bikers decide if he lives or dies. Welcome to the Echo Tales family. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe right now, because this journey will reach places in your heart you don't see coming. To everyone who's been riding with this channel from day one, may God continue to cover you and your loved ones. Before we step into this story, let's pray together. Heavenly Father, I ask for your protection over everyone watching right now. Bless their families, Lord. Heal every sickness, meet every need, and fill their hearts with peace that goes beyond understanding. Surround them with your favor and let your presence be real in their lives today. In Jesus' mighty name, Amen. Now, what you're about to see is the story about a boy with nothing, choosing to do the right thing anyway, stepping into the dark and putting his own life on the line when a young woman's breath is slipping away, and everyone else is too scared, or too hard, to move. Eli heard the splash before the scream. It was a sharp crack against the black skin of the river, a violent sound that sliced through the humid night behind the biker bar. For a heartbeat, everything stayed normal, the thump of classic rock leaking from the back door, the roar of engines on the street, drunken laughter rolling out into the alley like broken glass. Then the scream followed, high and ripped with panic, and Eli's world narrowed to the flickering yellow security light and the shape of a body thrashing in the water below the rotted pier. From his hiding spot against the cold concrete wall, Eli saw her arm first. Pale. Bare. Fingers clawing at the surface like they were trying to grab hold of the night itself. Her head bobbed up once, long dark hair plastered to her face, mouth open in a silent gasp as filthy river water swallowed her. Then she went under again, sucked down by a current that looked lazy from above but moved like a living thing beneath the surface. The men inside didn't hear it. They were busy with pool tables and bar fights and stories told too loud. Out here, it was just him, the river, and a stranger about to vanish like she had never existed. If you're new to this kind of story, listen closely, because what Eli does next is the reason an entire biker army will roar into the night for a boy with nothing. Before we go deeper, take a second to hit like, subscribe, and drop where you're watching from in the comments. This is more than a story, it's a reminder that one choice in the dark can change everything. Eli could have stayed hidden. The streets had taught him that lesson the hard way: keep your head down, stay invisible, live long enough to see another sunrise. At 17, he was already an expert in vanishing. He knew how to make his body small, how to tuck himself into the negative spaces of the city, the gaps under loading docks, the shadows between dumpsters, the cold spaces behind neon that never quite reached him. Tonight, his bed was a patch of concrete behind the Hell's Angels bar, his blanket a stolen hoodie that didn't fit, and his pillow the stolen warmth of an exhaust pipe that had gone quiet an hour ago. He pressed his back into the wall, heart pounding so hard his ribs hurt. His brain spit out all the reasons to walk away. The river was deeper than it looked. The current was stronger. He couldn't swim well. He was half-starved, lightheaded from not eating all day. Nobody would blame him for pretending he didn't hear the splash. Nobody would even know. The city swallowed secrets for breakfast. But Eli wasn't built for looking away. Not after the hospital. Not after the blinding white lights and the beeping machines and his mother's chest rising slower and slower while social workers argued in the hallway about capacity, and placement, and the system. Not after they told him his father was gone too, taken by an accident, on some job site he never got to see. He'd been 12 then, sitting in a plastic chair with his fists clenched around a paper cup of water, learning exactly how it felt when the world decided someone you loved was just paperwork. Now, 5 years later, he still carried the only proof his parents had existed, a worn photograph tucked inside his backpack. His father's arms slung around his mother, both of them smiling like they didn't know the future was sharpening its teeth. A tiny version of him, toddler big, perched between them with ice cream smeared across his cheek. Every night before he tried to sleep, Eli pulled that photo out and whispered the same promise. "I won't disappear. I'll do something that matters." The river below didn't care about promises. The girl, no, woman, he realized, had surfaced again. Under the security light, he saw her better this time. Early 20s maybe, mascara streaked, lips blue already around the edges. A leather jacket dragged her down, heavy and waterlogged. Her hands slammed against the surface in blind panic, then slipped, fingers losing their grip on the air. Her eyes found him for a split second. Wide. Wild. Begging without words. Eli felt something in his chest tear. He dropped his backpack. The photo spilled out into the dirt, face up, a ghost watching him. His bare feet scraped against concrete as he sprinted to the edge of the pier. The wood groaned under his weight, old and rotten, the kind of place nobody in their right mind trusted. The river breathed up at him, cold, chemical, blacker than the sky. He didn't think. He jumped. The impact hit like a car. The water punched the air from his lungs and slammed ice straight into his bones. For a second, he couldn't remember which way was up. The world became a swirl of black and brown and bubbles, the taste of rust and oil and something bitter forcing its way into his mouth. Panic clawed at his throat as his body screamed for air. He kicked hard, shoes slipping on nothing, arms pushing through the thick cold like it was cement. Then he felt her. Fingers brushed his wrist, weak and slipping. Eli grabbed at the darkness, hand closing around wet skin, a leather sleeve, hair tangled like seaweed. She was sinking fast, dead weight now, her body surrendering to the river. He hooked his arm around her chest, pulling her tight against him, and kicked toward what he prayed was the surface. His lungs burned, chest clamping down, vision sparking at the edges. For a moment, he thought he wasn't strong enough. He was just a homeless kid. A nobody. A ghost the city had already forgotten. Who was he to try and drag someone out of death's hands? The thought sliced through his mind like a knife, and then another voice, softer and older, rose up underneath it. His mother's voice, the way she used to whisper in the dark when thunder shook their old apartment. God sees you, baby. Even when nobody else does. His foot hit something, sludge, a rock, the start of the riverbed slope. He pushed off with everything he had left. They exploded out of the water in a choking, gasping mess of limbs and river and sound. Eli's first breath tasted like poison, but it was air and it was enough. The woman in his arms coughed violently, hacking up water that ran down his shoulder, her fingernails digging into his skin like she was trying to claw her way back to life. Up close, he could see the smeared eyeliner, the silver rings on her fingers, the small tattoo behind her ear, a tiny halo sitting crooked on a devil's tail. "Got you," he rasped, voice shredded. "I got you." The current tried to rip them away from the shore, but Eli kicked sideways, lungs screaming, shoulders on fire. Every stroke felt like pushing through wet concrete. The security light swung overhead on its rusted bracket, throwing dizzy arcs of yellow across the water, sometimes illuminating them, sometimes abandoning them to darkness. Finally, his hand found mud. His fingers sank into it, nails scraping against gravel and broken bottles. He clawed his way up the bank 1 inch at a time, dragging her with him. His elbows slipped, his knees hit rock, but he kept moving. The night pressed down like a weight. Somewhere above, a bottle shattered and laughter rolled out into the alley, oblivious. When they reached the flat patch of dirt beneath the security light, Eli collapsed onto his back, sucking air like he'd never tasted it before. The woman rolled onto her side, coughing up the river, body trembling uncontrollably. Her jacket clung to her like a second skin, water pouring from her sleeves. She was beautiful in a broken, dangerous way, the kind of girl who belonged on the back of a motorcycle, not at the bottom of a river. "Hey," he croaked, turning his head toward her. You alive?" She blinked, water and tears mixing on her cheeks, mascara smudged into dark wings. Her voice came out as a shredded whisper. I think so." Her gaze flicked over his torn hoodie, his too thin frame, the bare feet, the bruises that never had time to heal. Confusion knit her brows together. "Who are you?" Eli almost laughed. Who was he? Nobody. A kid sleeping behind a bar that wasn't his, in a city that didn't know his name. A boy with no address, no family, no future, just a photograph in a backpack and a promise that wouldn't let him walk away from drowning strangers. Just. "Eli," he said. "Doesn't matter." Above them, the night changed. It started as a low hum, barely there, a vibration in the ground that Eli felt more than heard. The woman heard it too. Her eyes widened, head snapping toward the alley that led to the street. The hum swelled into a growl. The growl became a roar. Within seconds, the sound was everywhere, engines, dozens of them, maybe more, ripping through the silence like a storm made of steel and rage. The music inside the bar cut off. Voices rose, chairs scraped, doors slammed open. Headlights burst into the alley, harsh and blinding, forming a cage of white and yellow that pinned Eli and the woman where they lay. The air smelled like gasoline, cigarette smoke, and something metallic that tasted like the edge of violence. Bikes poured into the back lot, engines snarling, chrome catching the light in cruel flashes. Leather vests. Patches. Skulls. Serpents. Men with eyes like knives and knuckles that told stories in scars. They circled in, forming a ring around Eli and the woman, tightening the noose with each rev of the throttle. The woman beside him went rigid. Her hand found his wrist, gripping it so hard it hurt. Her voice dropped to a broken whisper, the kind that came from somewhere far below the lungs. "Oh God," she breathed. "My dad." The crowd parted down the middle like someone had dragged a blade through it. A single bike rolled forward, slower than the rest, its engine lower, meaner, like it was growling a warning. The man on it was broad and silent, his presence making the others look smaller without moving a muscle. He cut the engine, swung one boot to the ground, and stood. He wore a black leather vest heavy with patches and history. His beard was shot with silver. A jagged scar ran from his jawline into his collar, disappearing beneath ink that crawled up his neck. A coiled serpent wrapped around a straight razor. His eyes, when the headlights hit them, were cold and relentless, the eyes of a man who'd buried more than one enemy. Across the back of his vest, stitched in bold letters that needed no explanation, were two words that ruled this part of the city. Hell's Angels. The woman, Lily, he realized, hearing someone whisper it like a prayer and a curse, pushed herself up on shaking arms. "Dad," she choked. He saved me." The man's gaze dropped to Eli. It moved over his soaked clothes, his shaking hands, his too thin chest rising and falling like it might give out at any second. Then it found the backpack lying in the mud a few feet away, half open, the old photograph glinting in the security light. Something in his expression flickered, just for a second. He stepped forward. Boots crunching on gravel. The ring of bikes holding its breath. The night itself waiting. "You," he said, voice low and dangerous. "What's your name, kid?" Eli swallowed, throat raw, every instinct screaming at him to run. But his legs wouldn't move. His body was done. His choices were over. "Eli," he said. "Just Eli." The man stared at him for a long, heavy moment. Then his gaze slid back to the photograph in the dirt. Slowly, almost unwillingly, he bent down and picked it up between two scarred fingers. He wiped a smear of mud from the plastic sleeve with his thumb and looked at the faces trapped inside. When he looked back at Eli, all the color had drained from his face. The roar of engines faded into a distant buzz. Lily's shallow breaths, the drip of river water from Eli's clothes, the hum of the security light, everything went quiet in the space between one heartbeat and the next. The man's voice dropped to a rough whisper that somehow cut through the silence. "Tell me that's not your father." And in that moment, with 400 bikers watching, Eli realized this wasn't just about a girl in a river anymore. Whatever lived inside that photograph had just turned his rescue into something far more dangerous. Razor didn't blink. For a long, suffocating moment, he just stared at the photograph in his hand, the wet security light painting hard shadows across his face. The noise of the engines, the murmurs of the men, Lily's ragged breathing. All of it seemed to slide to the edges of the world while he studied the smiling man in the worn picture. Eli's father. Younger. Alive. One arm around a woman, the other steadying a toddler with ice cream on his cheek. The same cheek Eli felt burning now under Razor's gaze. The biker president's jaw tightened. The tattooed serpent on his neck seemed to coil deeper into his skin as his throat worked around words he hadn't used in years. He lifted his eyes from the photo to Eli's face and, for a heartbeat, there was something like recognition there, shock first, then disbelief, and beneath it all, a flicker of something heavier. Guilt. The kind of guilt that doesn't fade with time, only digs in deeper. "Bring him," Razor said. Two bikers stepped forward immediately. Their hands were rough, but not cruel, as they lifted Eli from the mud. His legs shook, muscles jelly from the river, but he didn't fight. Lily tried to follow, taking a step toward him, but Razor's arm came out like a steel bar across her chest, stopping her. "Inside," he ordered, voice low. "Now." If stories like this grip you, hit like and subscribe so you never miss the next twist. Because from this point on, every step Eli takes pulls him deeper into a past that doesn't want to stay buried. They moved as a pack. The alley filled with the smell of exhaust and wet asphalt as engines cut off one by one. Boots stomped. Doors slammed. Eli was marched through the back entrance of the bar, past the main room where music had stopped mid-song, the last chord hanging in the air like a question nobody wanted to answer. Men lined the walls, eyes tracking him, conversations frozen. Neon signs flickered in the background, red and blue halos reflecting in half-empty bottles and metal surfaces. The clubhouse was bigger than it looked from the outside. Past the bar, the room opened up into a space that felt less like a hangout and more like a war room disguised as a party. Pool tables. Leather couches. A long wooden table scarred with knife marks and burn spots. The walls were crowded with framed photos of men in formation, bikes in long rows, patches gleaming on their backs. In some of the older ones, Razor looked younger, beard darker, eyes just as cold. Eli couldn't look too long. His head pounded, everything stretched thin by adrenaline and exhaustion. They didn't stop in the main room. Razor led the way down a narrow hallway, Lily glued to his side, fingers still shaking as they clutched the front of his vest. Doors lined the corridor, some closed, some cracked open just enough for curious faces to appear. The air grew heavier the farther they went, the smell of spilled beer replaced by something sharper, oil, metal, sweat, and the low hum of electronics. Razor stopped at a door marked private. He shoved it open and nodded for the men to take Eli inside. The room beyond looked like a command center. A massive desk dominated the space, cluttered with maps, folders, and a half-burned cigarette smoldering in an ashtray. One wall was covered in monitors, each showing a different angle of the property, gates, alleys, parking lots, nearby streets. Cameras watched everything. "Sit," Razor said. Eli dropped into the chair opposite the desk. The leather was cracked and stiff under his wet clothes. Lily hovered near the corner, not quite ready to sit, not quite ready to leave. She kept looking between her father and Eli like she was trying to solve a puzzle that scared her. Razor closed the door with a dull, final click. Silence settled over the room, heavy and tight. He walked around the desk, sat down slowly, and set the photograph in the center of the blotter, facing him. His fingers rested on either side of it, as if he feared it might blow away if he let go. "How old are you?" Razor asked finally. 17, Eli answered, voice rough. "I think." "You think?" Eli shrugged, a small, helpless motion. "I stopped counting when they stopped caring." Razor's eyes narrowed. "Who's they?" "The system. The homes. The people who pretend kids are boxes they can check and forget." A muscle jumped in Razor's cheek. He looked down at the photo again, thumb brushing over the face of the man who used to tuck Eli in at night, back when life was simple and the world hadn't learned his name just to write it on a death report. "What was your father's name?" Razor asked. Eli's throat tightened. Saying it out loud always hurt, like reopening a wound that had never healed right. "Adrian Cruz." Lily's head snapped toward her father. Razor didn't move, but the light seemed to shift around him. His knuckles turned white where his hands gripped the edge of the desk. He drew in a slow breath, like someone about to jump off a cliff they'd been standing on for years. "I knew him," Razor said. The words landed like a punch. Eli's heart stuttered. The room tilted slightly, his vision narrowing around that single sentence. "What?" Razor leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking under his weight. His eyes were no longer just cold, they were tired. Haunted. "I knew your father," he repeated. "And if you're sitting in my clubhouse right now, then I failed him worse than you think." The air in the room thickened. Eli swallowed hard, mouth dry. "They told me it was an accident," he said. "On the site. Scaffolding gave out. Wrong place, wrong time." Razor let out a sharp, humorless breath, almost a laugh, but not quite. "That's one way to describe a setup," he muttered. He reached for a drawer, pulled it open, and rummaged inside for a moment. When his hand came back up, it was holding a thin, battered folder bound with a rubber band. He set it on the desk. "Your father wasn't just a worker," Razor said. "He saw something he was never supposed to see. He got caught between men who handle problems with lawyers, and men who handle problems with bullets." Eli's pulse pounded in his ears. "What did he see?" he whispered. Razor hesitated. The monitors flickered behind him, cycling through night vision greens and grainy black and white feeds. Somewhere in the building, a door slammed, followed by a burst of laughter quickly cut short when someone remembered what was happening in this room. Before Razor could answer, the office door burst open. A tall, broad-shouldered biker with a shaved head and a jagged scar across his eyebrow staggered in, breathing hard. Sweat gleamed on his forehead, shining under the fluorescent light. His gaze flicked to Eli, then snapped back to Razor. "Boss," he said, voice tight. "We've got a situation." Razor didn't look surprised, just resigned. "This better be worth interrupting me." The man nodded, throat working. "It is. Someone tagged the back wall while we were pulling the kid in." Lily stiffened. Eli felt a cold finger trace the length of his spine. Razor's eyes hardened again, steel slamming back into place over whatever vulnerability had surfaced. "What does it say?" he asked. The biker swallowed, then recited the words like they'd been seared into him. "We know who the boy is. Hand him over, or your daughter pays for your sins." If stories like this make your heart race, remember that staying with us means you won't miss what comes next. Every twist, every betrayal, every line that could be someone's last chance. The room went dead silent. Lily's hand flew to her mouth. Her skin went pale beneath the smeared makeup, eyes glistening as they locked on her father. Eli's stomach dropped, a nauseating, weightless feeling, as if the floor had vanished beneath his chair. They know me," he managed. Razor stood up slowly. He picked up the folder, then the photograph, tucking both under his arm as if they were too important to leave sitting on the desk. When he stepped around the desk, the space seemed to shrink. He stopped in front of Eli's chair and looked down at him. "They know what your father knew," Razor said. "And they think you're the key to getting it back." Eli shook his head. "I don't know anything. I've been on my own since." "I believe you," Razor cut in. "But they won't. And they don't need the truth. They just need leverage. His gaze shifted to Lily, standing frozen near the wall. She looked back at him, eyes wide, chest rising and falling too fast. "Dad," she whispered. "What does that mean?" "It means you're not leaving this building without 2 men on you at all times," Razor said. His tone was sharp now, all business. "Orders, not comfort. It means we go on lockdown. No one in, no one out, until we know how deep this goes." He turned to the biker in the doorway. "Double the perimeter. Get eyes on every alley, every rooftop. If a shadow moves wrong, I want to know before it breathes." The man nodded and disappeared down the hallway, barking orders before the door had fully closed. Eli pushed himself to his feet, legs unsteady. "You can't keep me here," he said, voice shaking with fear and anger. "I don't want her hurt because of me." Razor stepped in close enough that Eli could see the tiny flecks of gray in his beard, the old, white scars on his knuckles, the lines carved by years of bad choices and worse nights. "You jumped into that river for my daughter," Razor said quietly. "That means I owe you." Eli swallowed, thrown by the sudden softness in his tone. "Then let me go before they come. If they want me, they'll follow." Razor shook his head. "You really think walking into the dark alone fixes this?" "No, kid. You're in it now. Whether you like it or not, you're under my protection." The word protection sounded strange in Eli's ears. Nobody had claimed him in years. Nobody had said anything about him since the last social worker slid his file into a cabinet and closed the drawer. For a heartbeat, something warm flared in his chest, quickly smothered by the icy edge of dread. Razor moved back behind the desk and tossed the folder down again, this time closer to Eli. "You want answers? Fine. Sit down. You're going to learn why your father died, and why the men who killed him are willing to burn my world to get to you." Lily finally spoke, her voice barely holding together. "Dad, who are these people?" Razor didn't look at her right away. He stared at the folder like it was a loaded gun pointed at all of them. "They're ghosts from a job we should have walked away from," he said slowly. "Men who don't forget, even when the rest of the city does." He flipped the folder open. Inside were photos, grainy shots of a construction site, scaffolding twisted and broken like crushed bones, police tape fluttering in the wind. Reports. Names. Dates. Eli's vision blurred as he caught glimpses of his father's name on official paper, reduced to ink and incident numbers. Razor tapped one page with his finger. "Your father saw a shipment he was never meant to see. Guns, money, and men with badges looking the other way. He agreed to talk, to testify. And before he could, the scaffolding holding him up just gave out." Eli's throat closed. "So it wasn't an accident," he whispered. Razor met his eyes. "No. It was a message." A sharp knock rattled the office door before anyone could speak. The handle twisted, then the scarred biker with the shaved head stepped back inside, face even paler than before. "Boss," he said, voice low and urgent. "You need to see this. Now." Razor's patience snapped. "What is it?" The man hesitated, then glanced at Lily and Eli. "They didn't just tag the wall," he said. "They left a picture too." A picture? Razor repeated. The biker nodded, swallowing. Of Lily. Taken from across the street. Tonight. For a second, nobody breathed. Razor's chair scraped back as he surged to his feet, rage rolling off him like heat from an open furnace. Lily's knees buckled, and she caught herself on the edge of the desk, eyes wide with terror as the reality hit. Someone had been close enough to watch her, to aim a camera at her, while she laughed with friends and leaned over the balcony earlier that evening. If you're still here with Eli and Lily, make sure you stay close, because when enemies start taking pictures in the dark, every second you miss could be the second everything changes. Razor grabbed his cut from the back of the chair and shrugged it on, the leather falling over his shoulders like armor. He snatched the photograph of Eli's family off the desk and slid it into an inside pocket, right over his heart. Then he jerked his chin toward the door. Stay in this room, he snapped at Eli. You don't move unless I say so. You got me? Eli opened his mouth to argue, but the look in Razor's eyes, pure, lethal focus, nailed him to the floor. He nodded once. Razor turned to Lily, his voice dropping. You don't leave my sight. She nodded, tears spilling over now, streaking down her already ruined makeup. The door swung open. Razor stepped into the hallway, Lily at his side, the scarred biker leading them toward the back lot where the tag waited. The door started to close behind them with a slow, inevitable creak. Eli took a step forward, mind racing, chest tight, staring at that narrow strip of light shrinking inch by inch. Just before it shut, he heard Razor's voice echo down the hall, hard as gunmetal. Lock it down. They're not just coming for the boy anymore. Razor's office felt smaller without him in it. The walls seemed to lean inward, the glow from the monitors painting Eli in ghostly green and white as camera feeds cycled through views of the lot, the alley, the surrounding streets. Somewhere beyond those walls, engines were roaring back to life, men were shouting commands, and Lily was walking beside her father with a target on her back. Eli could still hear Razor's last words echoing in his skull, they're not just coming for the boy anymore. He paced a tight line between the desk and the door, wet socks whispering against the floor. His clothes were still damp, clinging uncomfortably to his skin, each movement tugging at bruises the river had left behind. On the desk, the open folder stared back at him, papers ruffled from Razor's hands, photos of twisted metal and yellow tape half slid free. His father's name appeared again and again in cold black ink, a reminder that this nightmare had started long before Eli ever heard Lily scream. If you want to see how deep this story goes, like and subscribe before the next blow lands, because every second from here pulls Eli closer to the truth that killed his father and might destroy everyone who tried to help him. He stopped pacing and braced himself on the edge of the desk, breathing hard. On one monitor, he saw the back wall of the lot. Concrete stained with years of rain and exhaust, now defaced by fresh paint. Thick red letters bled across the stone like open wounds. He couldn't read them clearly from here, but he didn't need to. He already knew what they promised, him, in exchange for Lily. His chest tightened. This is my fault, he muttered. The word fault hit harder than it should. He thought of every foster home he'd bounced through, every time someone had called him trouble just for existing. The nights he'd sat awake, wondering if his parents would have survived if he hadn't been born, if maybe the universe had taken them back as payment for some cosmic mistake. Now a girl who had done nothing but slip on rotted wood was in the crosshairs because he happened to be near the river when she fell. A soft knock broke through his spiraling thoughts. Eli turned as the office door cracked open. Rita, the tattooed woman who'd watched him from the main room earlier, stepped inside, closing the door quietly behind her. Her gray-streaked hair was pulled into a messy ponytail, and there was grease on her forearm like she'd come straight from the garage. "You look like you're about to wear a hole in the floor," she said. Eli swallowed. He said not to move. "Walking isn't moving," she replied with a dry half-smile. "Running is moving. Screaming is moving. Stealing a bike and trying to jump the gate. Definitely moving." He didn't smile back. Her expression softened as she took him in, the damp clothes, the shadows under his eyes, the raw panic he was trying to swallow down. She stepped closer and set a paper cup on the desk. Steam curled from it, carrying the bitter smell of black coffee. "Drink," she said. "You'll think better if your brain isn't freezing to death." He wrapped his fingers around the cup, grateful for the warmth even if he hated the taste. "You heard?" he asked quietly. "About the wall." Rita sighed, the sound heavy. "Everyone heard. That's the point of a message like that. Fear travels faster than any bike." Eli stared down at the desk. "I should leave. Before they do more." "And go where?" she asked. "Out there, alone, while a crew that writes death threats in spray paint wants your head. You'd last an hour. 2, if they got hung up in traffic." "I'm not worth this," he snapped suddenly, the words spilling out hot and sharp. "I'm nobody. I sleep behind buildings. I dig through dumpsters. I don't even know why they care. I don't know anything about my dad except he worked, he loved us, and then he was gone." Rita's gaze dropped to the folder on the desk. "That's not all," she said softly. "Not anymore." He followed her eyes, forcing himself to look again. There was a photo he hadn't really processed before, a long shot of the construction site taken from across the street. In the corner of the frame, barely visible, a dark van sat half up on the curb, its plates washed out by glare. Eli's spine prickled. Even in stillness, there was something predatory about it. "Your father tried to do the right thing," Rita said. "He saw something ugly. Decided not to pretend it was fine. Men like that scare the people who profit from ugly." He thought of Razor saying, "It was a message." "What happens now?" Eli whispered. Before Rita could answer, one of the security monitors flickered. The feed from the lot jumped, lines of static tearing across the image like claws. Eli frowned, leaning closer. A second later, the picture stabilized, but there was someone new in the frame. A man in a dark hoodie stood just beyond the circle of bikes, half hidden in the shadows of the alley mouth. Too far for the cameras to catch his face clearly, but close enough to feel intentional. "Who is that?" Eli asked. Rita followed his gaze, her body going rigid. "That's too close," she said under her breath. She reached for the radio clip to her belt. "Bernie, talk to me. You see the guy in the alley?" Static crackled, then a voice answered, faint but clear. "Yeah. He's just standing there. Hands in his pockets. Not moving." "Move him on," Rita said. If he doesn't leave, bring him in. Eli watched the tiny figures on the screen as two bikers broke from the group near the wall and started toward the alley. The hooded man didn't flinch, didn't turn, didn't do anything until they were almost on him. Then he took one slow step backward, just one, and disappeared out of frame. "He's gone," Bernie's voice came through. "Slipped around the corner. Fast." Rita swore under her breath. "Coward." Eli's skin crawled. "They're watching," he said. "They're testing you." "Yeah," she replied quietly. "They are." The office door flew open again without a knock. The scarred biker from before, the one who delivered the message, stuck his head in. "Rita, Razor wants everyone in the main room," he said. His eyes flicked to Eli. "He says bring the kid." Eli's heart kicked. "What for?" The biker shrugged. "To stop pretending this is just about spray paint." Rita squeezed Eli's shoulder once, steadying him, then gestured to the hallway. "Come on, ghost boy," she said. "Time to meet the storm." The main room buzzed like a shaken beehive. Men clustered in small knots, voices low and tense, cigarette smoke curling up toward the stained ceiling. The music was off, the TV dark. Only the overhead lights and a few neon signs burned, washing the room in a harsh, uneasy glow. Lily sat on the end of one of the leather couches, elbows on her knees, hands tangled in her hair. Razor stood in front of her, one arm on the back of the couch, his body angled toward the rest of the room like a shield. When Eli stepped in, silence fell in ripples. Heads turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. He felt dozens of eyes land on him, some hostile, some curious, a few unreadable. Razor's gaze was the heaviest. "Kid," Razor said. "Come here." Eli's legs carried him forward even as his mind screamed to turn and run. He stopped a few feet away, close enough to see the new lines carved into Razor's face since the river. The biker held something in his hand, a photo, crumpled at the edges. Eli's lungs seized when he realized what it was. It was Lily. Leaning over the balcony rail earlier that evening, smiling at someone below. The shot had been taken from across the street with a zoom lens, the angle high and predatory. In the background, Razor's bikes gleamed under string lights. "This," Razor said, lifting the picture so everyone could see, "was taken less than 2 hours ago. While my daughter was laughing. While we were pretending this was just another Friday night." A low, angry murmur rolled through the room. "They were close enough to get this," Razor continued. "Close enough to watch her. Close enough to take her, if they wanted." He let the silence hang a beat too long, letting that thought sink in. "They didn't. You know why?" No one answered. "Because they don't want her gone," he said. "They want leverage. They want him." He pointed at Eli. The weight of the room shifted, like every breath had turned in his direction. Eli's heartbeat thudded in his throat. "I didn't ask for this," he said hoarsely. "No," Razor agreed. "You didn't. Neither did she." He nodded toward Lily. "But here we are." Lily lifted her head. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but there was anger in them now, not just fear. "So what do we do?" she asked. "Hide. Wait for them to make the next move." Razor shook his head. We lock down so they can't snatch you off the street, he said. And we find out what your old man died for. He turned to Eli fully. You said you didn't know anything. Think again. Every memory, every detail, every weird thing your father ever said before he died, I want it. Now. The room buzzed again at that, but Razor's raised hand cut it off. Eli tried to think, really think. Most memories of his father were ordinary. Football games on a tiny TV, cheap pizza on Friday nights, the smell of concrete dust clinging to his clothes when he came home from work. But there were moments that didn't fit. The night his father came home late, knuckles scraped, eyes too sharp. The way he'd lowered his voice when talking to a man at the door Eli never saw clearly. The envelope he'd hidden in the back of the closet, behind winter coats they couldn't afford to use. There was a box, Eli said slowly. In their room. Mom thought I didn't know about it. Dad called it insurance once when they were arguing. After he died, the box disappeared. She said he must have taken it with him to work, but she looked scared when she said it. Razor's jaw clenched. Did you ever see inside? Eli shook his head. Just the edge of a manila envelope. That's it. Razor swore under his breath. If they think whatever was in that box is still in play, they won't stop, he said. They'll go through every kid, every widow, every worker who ever shared a shift with him. One of the older bikers stepped forward. We can move the girl, he suggested, nodding toward Lily. Safe house out of town. They won't find her. They already found us, Lily shot back. And I'm not running while they hunt him. She jerked her chin toward Eli. If they think he's alone, they'll break him. Her words landed somewhere deep in Eli's chest. He stared at her, thrown by the way she said they'll break him, like she refused to let that happen. A stranger he'd pulled from a river was choosing not to disappear, not to let him carry this weight alone. If you're still here with them, understand this. Sometimes the only thing standing between a hunted kid and the people who want to erase him is one reckless girl and a man who's tired of burying his mistakes. Stay close, because the next choice they make could tear this family apart before it's even formed. Razor exhaled slowly. We're not handing him over, he said, voice final. We're not sending you away, he added to Lily. We end this. How? Eli asked. We don't even know what they want, not exactly. Just, something my dad died over. Razor's gaze darkened. We know who wants it, he said. And that's enough to start. He looked toward the wall of photos, eyes landing on one in particular. A group shot taken years ago, men lined up shoulder to shoulder in front of a different clubhouse. Some of the faces were gone now, claimed by prison or graves. One face, near the edge, made his throat tighten. They used to run with us, he said quietly. Before money made them hungrier than loyalty could feed. He turned back to the room, voice hardening. They call themselves the Black Vipers now. They think they're ghosts. Eli's skin prickled at the name. Those are the men who killed my father. Razor nodded once. And now they're circling back for the last piece of whatever he took from them. Engines roared outside, closer than before. The sound vibrated through the floorboards, rattling bottles on the shelves. Razor's head snapped toward the front of the clubhouse. The scarred biker grabbed his radio, swearing into it. "What is it?" Eli asked, dread clawing up his throat. The radio crackled. A panicked voice came through, thin and sharp. "Boss, you need to get out here. Now. We've got movement on all sides." "How many?" Razor demanded. There was a beat of static. Then the answer came, laced with disbelief and fear. "Too many. They're blocking the street. And they're not hiding this time." Razor's eyes met Eli's. In that look, Eli saw everything at once, the promise, the threat, the weight of a war he'd never asked to be part of. Lily stood up beside her father, shoulders squared, jaw tight. Razor reached behind his back and pulled a pistol from his waistband, checking the chamber with a practiced flick. He jerked his chin toward the hallway leading to the side exit. "Eli," he said, voice low and deadly calm. "Stay glued to Rita. You move when she moves. If this goes bad, she gets you and Lily to the garage. No arguments." The main doors boomed with the first heavy knock. Glass rattled. Men moved, hands going to weapons, bodies shifting into battle lines rather than bar posture. The knock came again, louder, followed by a voice on the other side, amplified, mocking, far too confident. "Razor." It called. "We came for what's ours. Don't make us kick your house in front of your new pet." The room collectively held its breath. Razor took one step forward, shoulders squared, eyes burning with a fury that had been simmering since the scaffolding collapsed all those years ago. He glanced once more at Eli and Lily, standing side by side now without realizing it. Then he nodded to the men at the door. "Open it," he said. "Let's see what they dragged out of hell this time." Eli had never heard silence this loud. For a few seconds after Razor said, "Open it," the entire clubhouse held its breath. Boots shifted. Fingers tightened around gun grips. Somewhere in the back, a bottle clinked against another, the tiny sound unnaturally bright in the heavy quiet. The main doors loomed at the front of the room, thick wood and metal bracing that suddenly didn't feel like enough. On the other side, engines idled like beasts waiting to be unleashed. Two bikers unlatched the deadbolts and pulled the doors inward. Cold night air punched into the room, carrying the smell of exhaust, rain on asphalt, and something sour. Anticipation turned rotten. Outside, the street was packed. Headlights burned in a jagged semicircle, casting long shadows into the doorway. The black vipers had not come quietly. They had come like a flood. If stories like this have you hooked already, like and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Because the choices made in the next few minutes will decide who walks out of this night, and who becomes another ghost in Eli's past. A man stepped forward from the glow of the headlights. He wasn't as big as Razor, but he carried himself with a different kind of danger, sharp, twitchy, like a knife that liked the taste of its own edge. His viper's cut was open over a dark hoodie, a coiled snake patch writhing on his chest. His hair was slicked back, his smirk too lazy for someone standing at the front of an armed mob. "Razor," he drawled. "Long time." Razor stepped into the doorway, blocking most of the view behind him. Eli, Lily, and Rita stood a few paces back, close enough to see the man's face over Razor's shoulder. The room formed a rough V behind them, bikers in rows, weapons low but ready. "Castro," Razor said. I see prison didn't teach you manners. Castro spread his arms as if greeting an old friend. Oh, it taught me plenty, he said. Like how the world forgets about men who don't make themselves unforgettable. Your boy did that, you know. The construction rat. The one who thought he could talk to feds and walk away breathing. Eli's stomach flipped. Razor didn't glance back, but his shoulders tightened almost imperceptibly. Careful, he said. You're talking about a dead man in front of his son. Castro's smirk crooked higher. His gaze slid past Razor, searching the faces inside until it landed on Eli. The recognition there wasn't about the boy himself, it was about what he represented. A loose end. A keyhole that might still fit an old key. There he is, Castro said softly. Minnie Cruz. Thought you could stay a ghost, huh? Heat climbed Eli's neck, fear and anger tangling in his chest. I don't know anything, he fired back before he could stop himself. Castro shrugged. Maybe. Maybe not. Doesn't matter. He jerked his chin toward the lot. You've got something that belonged to his old man. Paper. Proof. Names that still make some important people sweat. Razor's voice went flat. And you figured threatening my daughter would make me hand it over? Castro's eyes flicked to Lily, standing tense and pale at Rita's side. He didn't leer or grin. He just nodded once, like he was confirming her existence. You love loud, Razor, he said. Bad habit. Makes targets easy to find. Rita's fingers tightened on Lily's arm. Razor took one step forward, boots on the threshold. This is how it's gonna go, he said. You're going to get on your bikes and leave. You're going to pretend this wall, this street, this building never existed. Whatever you think Cruz left behind, you'll never see it. You keep pushing. The only thing you're going to see is the inside of a coffin. A low murmur rippled through the vipers behind Castro. Guns angled higher. Engines revved. Castro's smirk finally slipped, replaced by something colder. We both know you're not walking away from this clean, he said. So let's stop pretending. We don't need your stash. We don't need your wall. We just need the kid. Razor laughed, a short, harsh sound. You step over this line for him, you don't step back. Castro's eyes gleamed. Who said I was planning to? For a split second, everything slowed. Razor shifted his weight. Castro's fingers twitched. Eli felt time stretch thin, like a wire pulled to breaking. Then someone in the back, no one ever remembered who, yelled something wordless and furious, and the world snapped. The first shot cracked the air like lightning. Glass behind the bar exploded. Men dove. Someone cursed. The main room turned into chaos in a single heartbeat. Razor shoved backward, slamming the doors partially shut as bullets tore splinters from the frame. Bikers dropped behind overturned tables and pillars, returning fire in sharp, punishing bursts. Down! Rita shouted, yanking Lily and Eli toward the side hallway. Drywall puffed dust where bullets struck too close. The air filled with cordite and shouted orders. Eli's ears rang, sound warping in and out like waves. They dove behind the thick support column near the office corridor. Lily pressed her back against the concrete, breathing in fast, shallow bursts, eyes blown wide. Eli could see the smear of river dirt still on her boot, the chipped black polish on her nails as she clutched her knees. "I'm sorry," he blurted, the words ripped from someplace raw. "This is because of me." She turned her head sharply. "I walked to that river on my own," she said. "I leaned over the rail. I slipped. You're the only reason I'm not at the bottom right now. Don't you dare take the blame away from the people pointing the guns." Her voice shook, but the steel underneath it was real. Rita peeked around the column, ducking back as plaster chipped near her face. "Garage," she yelled over the noise. "We move on my count. Razor wants you two breathing." Eli swallowed. "What about him?" Rita's jaw clenched. "He'll buy us the seconds we need." Seconds felt like a luxury they didn't have. Bullets hammered the front. Someone screamed, then swore that they were fine. The music system sparked and died as a stray round shredded wiring. The neon sign over the bar flickered, then blew out, glass raining down like tiny diamonds. 3. Rita shouted. 2, go. They broke from cover, sprinting down the hall toward the back of the building. The sounds of the firefight dulled slightly, muffled by walls, but the tremor under Eli's feet said the storm was still right behind them. The garage door burst open ahead, light from flickering fluorescents spilling into the corridor. Rows of bikes sat like sleeping predators, chrome catching the light in harsh glints. A side door at the far end led to the alley, another possible exit if the front collapsed. Rita shoved keys into Lily's hand. "You remember the route to the river lot?" Lily nodded, face set, fear shoved down under action. "Good," Rita said. "You and the kid take the back alley, loop around 3 blocks, and head for the underpass. Wait there until you hear from Razor or me." Eli froze. "You're not coming." Rita shook her head. "Somebody has to keep the wolves busy." She forced a quick, fierce smile. "Besides, I never liked running." Eli's chest burned. "You can't just." A fresh explosion from the front rocked the building, tools clattering off hooks, dust raining from the ceiling. Somewhere out there, Razor roared something wordless, rage, command, refusal to fall. "Move!" Rita barked. "I'm not dying because you suddenly believe in arguing." Lily grabbed Eli's wrist and pulled. They ran between the bikes, engines cold and silent, the smell of oil and rubber sharp in their noses. Lily hit the side door with her shoulder, stumbling into the narrow alley behind the clubhouse. The night was alive with distant gunfire. Flashes lit the street at the front of the building, reflected in puddles on the cracked pavement. Somewhere a siren wailed, getting closer, too late. Lily yanked Eli into the shadows and bolted down the alley, boots splashing through shallow water. "Left," she gasped. "Then straight past the chain link. There's a gap." He followed, lungs burning, legs screaming from everything they'd already done tonight. They skidded around a corner, the brick walls rising high on either side, graffiti a blur in the half-light. Ahead, the chain-link fence loomed, topped with rusted barbs. "There," Lily panted, pointing. A section near the bottom bowed outward where someone had cut and kicked it years ago. "On your stomach." Eli dropped, shoving his way under first, palms scraping on damp concrete, jacket catching on jagged metal. Lily followed, the fence squealing softly as it flexed. For a second, he imagined the sound was loud enough to drag bullets toward them. They spilled out onto a side street. Empty. For now. The underpass yawned 3 blocks away, a dark throat-swallowing light. If we make it there, Lily said between breaths, we can disappear for a minute. Think. Think about what? He choked. I don't have a plan. I don't have anything. She shot him a look that was too sharp for how young she was. You have something they're willing to kill for, she said. Maybe it's not in your head. Maybe it's in your blood. Your name. Where you came from. He swallowed, her words hitting a place he didn't know how to name. If you've made it this far with Eli and Lily, stay close, because when a hunted boy realizes he's more than a target, the next decision he makes could turn a lifetime of running into the moment he finally stands his ground. They reached the underpass, lungs scraping for air. The concrete belly of the bridge swallowed them in shadow, the city's sounds muffled to a dull roar. Streetlights bled in at the edges, hazy and distant. Water dripped from somewhere overhead, each drop echoing like a slow clock. Lily leaned against a support pillar, sliding down until she sat on the cold ground. Her hands shook as she pushed her wet hair back, smearing grime across her cheeks. I should have stayed, she whispered. I should have fought with them. Eli dropped beside her, chest still heaving. You going back in there won't stop bullets, he said. Razor needed you alive. He needed you alive, she corrected. I'm just the bait they used to get you here. He flinched. Don't say that. It's true. She laughed once, a brittle sound. My whole life, people treated me like Razor's weakness. Turns out I was just step 1. Eli stared at his hands, at the grime under his nails, the faint tremble he couldn't control. When I jumped in that river, I thought, if I died, at least it would mean something, he admitted. I didn't think about after. I didn't think about this. Lily looked at him, really looked, like she was seeing past the dirt and bruises for the first time. You think God dragged you out of that water just to have you shot in an alley? She asked quietly. He laughed without humor. I don't know what God wants with me. She nudged his shoulder with hers. Maybe he wants you to finish what your dad started. The word slipped under his skin and stayed there. Finish what your dad started. Not just survive it. Not just run from it. End it. He thought of the box his mother hid. The envelope. The way she told him, some things are too dangerous to touch, but her eyes had said, too important to burn. He thought of Razor, standing in the doorway with a gun in his hand and an old guilt burning in his eyes. He thought of Castro, smiling like he believed ghosts never fight back. I'm tired of being the reason people get hurt, Eli said. I'm tired of running from a story I don't even know. Lily sat up straighter. Then we stopped running. How? She pointed back toward the direction of the clubhouse. Razor's not just some thug with a bike. He's been collecting secrets for years. If anyone can hurt them back, it's him. But he needs the last piece your family had. Eli stared into the dark mouth of the underpass. Slowly, pieces started to click in his mind. Places his dad used to take him. A storage unit with a broken light. A phrase he'd muttered once, if anything happens, the river keeps my promise. The river. Not the one behind the bar, another stretch, under a different bridge, near a row of old storage lockers with peeling blue paint. He remembered throwing rocks there with his father on a Sunday afternoon, back when life was simple. His father had pulled him close, pointed at the graffitied concrete, and said, "Some things we hide where nobody wants to look." "Lily," Eli breathed. "I think I know where he put it." Her eyes widened. "Where?" "Not far," he said. "But we can't do it alone. If we get it, they'll come harder. We need Razor. We need his men." She pushed herself to her feet, determination burning through the fear. "Then we find a way back to him." He stood too, legs still shaky but mind suddenly clear. The underpass no longer felt like a hiding place. It felt like a crossroads. On one side, the life he knew, running, sleeping in shadows, being hunted for something he didn't understand. On the other, a path that could end with his name carved into stone, or finally written into something that mattered. "I'm done being bait," Eli said. "I'm ready to be the problem they didn't plan for." Lily smiled, small but fierce. "Now you sound like my father." Somewhere in the distance, more sirens wailed, closer than before. The night was shifting. The city was waking up to the war whispered in its alleys for years. Eli looked up at the thin strip of sky visible between the overpass beams. His voice was barely more than a breath, but the promise in it was louder than any engine. "Dad," he whispered, "I'm going to finish this. For you. For Mom. For everyone they think is too small to matter." Lily stepped up beside him. Together, they turned away from the underpass and back toward the lights of the city, walking not as a victim and a rescued girl, but as two people carrying the last, dangerous piece of a story others thought they'd buried. Behind them, the river they'd left roared on in the dark, keeping its secrets for just a little longer. Ahead of them, Razor bled and fought to hold a line that had been cracking for years. In between, somewhere only Eli could lead them, lay the proof that could burn the Black Viper's empire down to the foundation. And for the first time in a long time, Eli wasn't running from the fire. He was walking straight toward it.